I am going to talk to you about getting out of little ruts and little licks that you find yourself playing over and over and over again. And this is actually a really great way to not only improve your improvising, but just improve yourself as a musician overall. And it's actually a lot easier than you think to implement these things because it doesn't require playing more. It usually requires playing less and just using your ear a little bit in a way that maybe you wouldn't think to when you're just trying to rip and really feel the music. And speaking of easy, I am using the NUX B2 wireless system because, well, this concept is just about being free and open with your note selection and musical choices, and that's what this wireless system allows you to do. Check out the link in the description if you are interested in cutting the cord, so to speak, and getting this awesome B2 wireless system from NUX FX. Transmitter goes in your guitar. You can plug this receiver straight into an amp, or like I'm gonna do, plug it into the front of your pedal board. In case y'all are interested in the sounds coming out of my guitar today, this is my setup for this video. So I wanna talk to you guys today about a melody that I wrote over a bridge section of a really old song that I just happened to come across. And I wanted to sort of dive into the melody and talk about how, as guitar players, we can tend to get stuck in certain scales, whether that's the major scale or the pentatonic scale, and sort of forget our sense of melody. And what I mean by that is maybe you have a couple go-to licks that sort of work over different chord progressions, and you know they're gonna work and they always sound good, but they can also sort of limit you in a way. I know for myself, the pentatonic scale is right in my wheelhouse as far as any sort of minor progression or tonality. Obviously you can throw in some chromatic notes and a couple choice notes from other scales, but generally we're all rooted in a certain style. And so this lesson is sort of about using your ear to not necessarily get out of those boxes, because it's always good to return to your comfort zone and you know what makes you feel good when you're playing music, but also be a little bit more creative and as a result, a little bit more effective as a musician. So the progression we're gonna be working with today is a 1 major to flat 6 major, and I have a couple added ninths on these chords just to make them a little bit more dreamy, and I'm gonna go ahead and throw on the chord progression with my looper first, and then start to explain a little bit of my mindset and get into the meat of this lesson. All right, so here's what I'm thinking right off the bat. C minor is gonna work out. Pretty straightforward, right? So that's exactly what I'm talking about when I say we have a sweet spot, most of us guitar players, that we know it works, but at the same time, from song to song or progression to progression, we tend to get stuck in these little ruts and play the same exact stuff. And sometimes that's cool, like, you know, sometimes you just want to jam, but if you're trying to compose something with a little bit more feel, or maybe something that you're just not used to playing, I think the best thing to do is use your ear. You can think about it from a music theory perspective too, but not everybody knows music theory or likes to apply it in this way. So I'm just going to use my ear and sort of go through how I ended up with the melody that I will eventually get to, but I'm going to kind of take you through my thought process so that way you can apply this concept to your own guitar playing and maybe break out of some of these little ruts that you may find yourself in. So the first thing that I'll notice is that this is not a diatonic progression. There's only 5 notes in the minor pentatonic scale. And because of that, we have a lot of sort of room to be ambiguous. That's why there's not a lot of clashing when I'm moving between those two chords. Another comfort zone you might find yourself in would be the natural minor mode of in this case, the E flat major scale. So I think the best way to think about this is just from a pentatonic perspective with 2 extra notes. I'll just give you a little context there as well. So as you can hear, both the minor pentatonic and the natural minor sound great over this, but as I mentioned, those are also my kind of preferred tonalities, and you can get really cool sounds out of them, but in the end, you're sort of playing the same licks over and over. So simplifying the amount of muscle memory and using your ear can be a great way to break out of this. And an example would be to, instead of looking at this from the perspective of just a minor, C minor key, you can look at each chord in this progression as its own entity. So C major and G sharp major. So there are some notes in the C major sound that are not going to work over this. For example, the B note. If we had this G sharp, you can hear a B does not work over this G sharp. So that is a note that we would not play over the G sharp minor chord. However, we would target it, because I think it sounds really cool, over this C major sound. And here would be a quick example of that B note. So as you could hear there, it sounds really nice. It's like this weird dreamy suspended sound. But if I come down to a note such as, I don't know, the root note, the G sharp, that's not going to work over the C. So it's sort of this resolution. As you can see here, the note that I'm targeting, this G sharp, is only a half step away. So technically that melody doesn't sound good by itself, but when you throw some chords behind it, so it's as simple as that, using your ear to target these different notes that will sound really great over a certain chord in the progression, but maybe not the other chords necessarily. And this is, obviously there's many different directions you can go with this, so I'm going to continue to use my ear and show you which notes may not sound that great and which notes will, and sort of work it out by ear to eventually arrive at this melody that I think is really, really cool, and I'm proud of just from using my ear. It didn't really come from music theory, it just came from my head, which is sort of the point of music theory. It's more about a tool belt to get what's inside your head out on the frets, but sometimes all you need is your ear. So let's move forward. So there was an example of, I played that first lick over the C major chord, worked great, played it over the G sharp major chord, did not work great. Let's move again. That right there is an example of using what I love, the pentatonic sound and the natural minor sound, as a foundational piece. So I'm not telling you to avoid what you're comfortable with. It's more about sprinkling it in a little bit more sparsely, so that way when you do hit a little run like that, it sounds so much better because it's new. It's part of a melodic phrase instead of just wankery, as it were. So let's keep. So that is more or less the melody that I ended up with, and I'm going to put the whole thing together now so you can see where I sprinkle in my favorite part of playing guitar, the bluesy pentatonic stuff, but also have these melodic notes that aren't necessarily going to work over each other's respective chords, but will work over their own home chord. And as a result, I think it comes out to be a pretty sweet little melody. So there you have it, guys. What do you think? Pretty sweet. I think it's really a great way to not only improve your improvising skills, but just become a better listener and a better musician when it comes to creating your own music. Maybe you're not a songwriter or whatever, but I think everybody creates little songs when they solo, especially when it comes to playing over jam tracks or going to open mic nights or whatever. You should always kind of be trying to compose something and leaving a musical mark on whatever situation you found yourself in. Make sure to check out the new XFX B2 wireless system if you are interested in that sort of thing. It's an awesome product. There's a link down in the description for you to grab one. And most importantly, thank you so much for watching and supporting Music Is Win. And I will see you guys next time for another video. But until then, keep shredding.